Okay, good to see everybody. Good to be back. I was thinking coming in here today, back when I was a head coach on Sundays, I used to send out this little newsletter on Sunday nights to constituents and so on, and that was sort of my method to officially flush the last game, good, bad, or ugly. And of course, at this level, Shane has media commitments on Sunday nights and pretty much every day of the week, I'm sure. But so that's, as a head coach, you get a chance to kind of move on as you get your thoughts out there. As coordinators, we've got to wait till Wednesday to come see you. And of course, we've moved on. We're deep into a new week of preparation, but obviously, you want to address what happened, and it certainly was a disappointing loss in many ways. Just feeling like you were right there and about to do something pretty meaningful. I say this all the time, but I think it's really true, and that is that every year is different, every team is different, every season is different, the way things play out is different. That's just football. And certainly, with this group, we're still working really hard to try to put together 60 minutes of truly complimentary football in all three phases, and I believe we will soon. I really do. From my standpoint, though, when you've had some tough losses, including Saturday, that's not a time to start to make radical changes. I think to the contrary, you really have to stick to the core of what you're doing and the fundamentals and your beliefs in what your team can do. So to me, I don't really change a whole lot. I'm not going to come out this week and reinvent the wheel or something just because we had a tough loss the other night. To me, it's more about being the same guy every day. And I show the kids a slide at the beginning of the year in the first special teams meeting, and it has all the opponents up there. And I said, listen, I'm going to be the same madman running around out there on the field for a half hour a day that we do special teams work if we're getting ready for Furman, or we're getting ready for the national champions or Eastern Illinois, or it really doesn't matter. I'm going to try to be consistent with who I am and how we approach things. And the hope is that the players respond to that and that they're trying to do the same thing. Now, week to week, things are going to change. You're going to look at an opponent. You're going to attack that opponent in different ways and so forth. But I'm kind of the guy that believes in dancing with the girl that you brought to the prom, right? I'm not going to come in here today and, I'm going to use some Just for Men in my hair today and get rid of all the grays or something. Or, I'm not going to start like doing some voodoo or something like that, right? So you stick to what you believe and what got you here. Now, that being said, we're getting ready for a very good football team this week, and a team in my mind that obviously is having a great season so far with the games they've won and the close games they've won and the record they've accumulated. But I think when you really look at them and now getting to know them over the course of 3 years, I think their personnel is improving. I think they know how to play complementary football. You could see there's a bigger picture plan there, and there's a cohesiveness between all three phases. And you also see that they are getting bolder, getting more aggressive on special teams this year. There's been certain things that they've done that maybe in the past they would not have been as adventurous. They've had a surprise onside kick this year. They've thrown a fake punt for a touchdown. They've returned a long field goal. They put a returner back there and created a return out of it earlier in the season. They've started doing muddle huddle this year, which is something that you would not have seen them done in the past. And they're going after more punts, where in the past they might have been a little bit more conservative. So you could see their confidence is growing, and along with that, because when you get really aggressive on special teams, you're saying that you might put your defense in some bad spots. And I think they're showing a willingness to take those chances this year. So from our end, that gives you more to prepare for. So it's a challenging week from a preparation standpoint, but I'm excited about the challenge. I do think they've got some really good specialists. Their kicker, Mevis, who I'm very familiar with. I went and saw him kick in high school up in Northwest Indiana, up in that Gary area. He's got a big-time leg. He's hit some record-long type field goals. He's also handling the kickoff duties for them this year. They've played 2 punters. They seem to have settled on an American, of all things, this week. He's taken over the duties. A guy named Bauer, number 93 for them, and he can angle punt. He can rugby punt. He's having a good season so far in the last 3-4 games that he's played in. And then Luther Burden, of course. I was nervous about this guy last year just because he's so darn aggressive back there with punts. It doesn't matter if the punt's coming down on the 3-yard line. It doesn't matter if the punt's rolling on the ground. This guy is going to be super aggressive, and you see his confidence at receiver. You see his confidence at punt returner, and he's averaging like 12 yards per return in his career. They've used a bunch of different kick returners. The guy that they seem to have settled on, or maybe just used most recently, Marquise Johnson, number 17, played well against Kentucky last week, and he's also the guy that caught the fake punt from the punter for a touchdown last week against Kentucky. So you could tell he's another guy that's got some confidence and some swag about him. So big challenge those guys present for our coverage units, and really hoping that we can generate something with our return units. We had another chance last week for what I thought was going to be a big kickoff return, and we were 1 block away from that. So that's been somewhat frustrating for me, but we're going to, again, stay the course and keep doing the things that we know have worked and will get us eventually to where we want to go. And I got to keep figuring out who the right mix of guys are and continue to try to bring along some of these younger players.
Pete, a couple for you.
Is that an NYU shirt?
Yeah.
How about that?
It's not bad, right?
Very nice.
It's a very good place to visit.
No football program, though, unfortunately.
Maybe
was it pre-World War II? They probably played football pre-World War II. I'll have to do, in my spare time, I'll do some history on that.
I'll look that up for you, too. A couple for you. One, the pooch kick to start the game. Was that intended? And the second, Kai is a guy that you always trust. He had such a fantastic year. He had a couple of mishit punts.
He absolutely did.
How do you handle that with a guy who's been there and might be struggling some?
Yeah. No, it's 2 good questions. No, the first kick, Mitch just didn't get all of it, and he was kicking into the wind at that point, so that one didn't quite carry as long as we wanted it to. And we tell our guys, every single guy at the time they go out there, like, you got to be ready to cover a kick. You can never assume that it's going to be a touchback. You can never assume it's going to be a fair catch. And the truth is, on that one, we missed 3 tackles. We had a chance to get that guy down well inside the 25-yard line. He had to back up to catch it, so the timing was off. The guy that he was responsible to block came clean and made the first hit, missed. We had another guy come clean on a twist and bounced off him. And then a couple other guys, added themselves on, but didn't stop the vertical charge of the return. So I was disappointed more in how we covered that kick than the kick itself. Relative to Kai, he's been inconsistent with his drops, and we have spent more practice time here in recent weeks addressing that. Some times in practice where maybe you're trying to get him a little bit more rest, and you just don't want him out there just banging more punts, because that's not always the answer, and your leg is dragging by Saturday. But we have been trying to put some more time into just basic technique, and some drills to try to improve the consistency of his drops. So there's no question about it. I mean, you got a guy that was all conference and received a bunch of different accolades. And when you talk about a play here and a play there, and your best players stepping up at critical times, that includes a specialist, right? I don't care what level of college football you're playing at. It's no different in the SEC. And I coached at Division III Hampden-Sydney College. My standards, my expectations don't change. Like, you've got a job to do. You got to go out there and do it. You got to do it to the best of your ability, and you certainly got to do it in those high pressure situations. And that was the last punt of the game. We weren't even pressured, so it's not like there were 8 guys breathing down his neck at that point. So he knows he's got to improve. He's a dude, right? That's a guy right there that you want in the foxhole with you. So I'm not worried about his confidence or anything else. The first punt of the game that he had the other day was his best punt of the year. So he'll be just fine, and he's trying to address some of the things that have perhaps caused some of these inconsistencies.
In Mike, you shut down their football program in 1952.
So there you go. They survived World War II.
They played at Yankee Stadium. They played all over, apparently.
So right about the same time the Georgetown Hoyas shut down. I think that was 1950. And then they brought it back as club football in the late 60s, and then went Division III in 1970. My coach, God rest his soul, Scotty Glacken, coached right up through my senior year, one more year after that, I think. And so there were a lot of teams that were sort of in that situation. Hoyas fortunately brought it back. Had a big win over another former team of mine, the Lehigh Mountain Hawks, the other day, my first head coaching job. So anytime Georgetown and Lehigh clash on the gridiron, I'm always somewhat torn,
As far as this football team, the block field goal, what led to that? What played into y'all being able to get a piece? And I guess how satisfying was it to?
Very, very satisfying. That was a game going in. We got one against Florida last year off the edge, and we were optimistic that we might have a shot at another one going into this game. And let me just say this: when it comes to blocking kicks and blocking punts, one of my coaching mantras that I've probably worn out over the years is that every play is its own entity. And what we tell the field goal block unit is this: there were 9 kicks in that game the other day by Florida. One of them was low. But on the one that was low, we got penetration and we got a hand on the flight line of the ball and we blocked it. And that was Tyreek Johnson, who has a knack for doing that. If you don't go hard every play and you don't put yourself in position to perhaps block a kick on every play, then when that low one comes, it's still going to sail through the uprights, right? So that to me is the lesson in all that. You have to go hard every time. You have to look at every single play as its own entity. If you got blocked on the last one, you might not get blocked on this one. Maybe that guy across from you screws up, and that creates just enough space for you to get through there. So that was encouraging to see, and there was some good things to build on right there, and hopefully some bigger picture lessons along with that as well.
Pete, with Kai, where, I guess you have a senior guy, how does, an inconsistently see that come in sort of at this point in his career, and, all of those sort of details, I guess, coming together?
If I could explain that, Emily, I'd be doing this via Zoom from Pawleys Island right now and have a boat drink in my hand, all right, and I'd just be doing some consulting. I'd probably be working for one of those really successful Georgetown grads, and then just doing a little special teams consulting on the side. But no, when it comes to the specialists, all right, I know enough just to be dangerous. I get to know each guy. I get to know the nuances of each guy. I get to know what works. Alex Herrera drops a ball on his punt very different than what Kai does. And so what works for Kai, what works for Alex, and you sit there and you watch it with him and you study it with him. but I think there's a fine line between coaching them and providing feedback for them, but not micromanaging them either, because every one of those guys is a little different and has different things that have worked for them, and so you're trying to reinforce the good when you see it, and try to drill it, and you're going to try to point out the things that need to be fixed. I think one of the keys to being a specialist is we give them, and this is very purposeful, I give them a lot of time before practice to have a pretty thorough warm-up routine without me there. And that's, again, very well thought out, because that's their time to not have me breathing down their neck like I tend to do in practice and put pressure on them in practice to perform. I want them to have that alone time to kind of work through any issues that they might be addressing, and that alone time to kind of mentally prepare for the practice and get their bodies ready to go. So, and again, you got to be careful not to overwork these guys, because then the next thing you know, they don't have enough pop in their leg on a Saturday. So, there's no, that may not be a totally fair explanation, but I will just say there's no panic, from my standpoint. He's going to be just fine.
Pete, 2 for you. The first one, Shane came in here.
Can I remember 2 questions? All right,
Well,
we'll give it a good shot. I actually have done that on other occasions. So
I wasn't going to be the guy that fires like 2 or 3 questions at you, and you say like, what's that third one? I'm going to ask one question at a time. But the first one is, with Shane coming in here yesterday, he told us about his foot. As the associate head coach, has there been any discussions about potentially you having any more responsibilities this weekend? I don't know if he's going to be sitting in a chair. I don't think he'll be like Hugh Freeze up in the press box.
Yeah, so the first thing I told him was that I recommend sheetrock walls more so than solid objects. All right, that's from personal experience. No, I don't anticipate any other responsibilities. I will say this, on the practice field, we switch spots a lot. Like, and he'll pick, all right, I'm going to be down with the offense now, and you're with the defense, or vice versa. And I kind of just, he runs a lot faster than me. So, and he's in much better shape than me. Not that I'm in bad shape, but he's in better shape than me. So I'll just spot him, right? And I'll see, all right, okay, he's sprinting over to the defensive field, so I'm going to now sprint, which I don't, again, move that fast, but I'll get over to the opposite field to help manage that period. Well, he's staying in the same spot a little bit more this week, so I kind of know where he is. He's probably going to stay over there, so it's a little bit easier for me to figure out where to go during those team periods. But no, he's a tough guy. He'll be just fine, and a little bit of adversity for him. So that's. I had a player in my office this week that I had a wonderful conversation with, guy who's really improving, and we were talking a lot about controllables and uncontrollables, and focusing on the things you can and not the things that don't matter and all that, and we preach that a lot as coaches. I've been preaching it for a lot since I was 31 years old and became a head coach. And preaching it is one thing, living it is harder. And I've struggled at times myself with that. So, we all get tested. And we're all getting tested right now, right? But that's where we want to be, right? If we're preparing these young men for life after football and life after South Carolina, like, staying focused on what matters and the task at hand and controlling what you can control. Again, easy to talk about, harder to live it. Like, put this thing away. You know what I mean? Put this away and let's go play ball, right? And that's what I think.
And the other question.
Oh, yeah, there is a second.
Yeah,
come on, let's go.
The other question for you. Shane mentioned yesterday that Stone Blanton, he's been a little banged up. Yeah. And the thought process sometimes when you're talking about who that next linebacker could be, it depends maybe on special teams and how much they can impact. How much of a say, and what's the process from your perspective when you're trying to help out in terms of figuring out, okay, this guy, that guy, not just from a defensive standpoint, but it could be offense as well if someone is banged up?
Absolutely. So I get very involved, whether it's just me looking at everything or whether it's in a staff meeting or it's popping in with the defensive staff or the offensive staff with the personnel, and take a lot of pride in knowing every single guy on the roster and where we're at. And I'm constantly asking questions about how things are evolving at certain positions, who's playing more, who's playing less. Obviously, the injuries are critical because you're trying to put together, the best package across all of your units that you can. And you certainly don't want to start investing reps in somebody who may not even travel. You understand there's a trickle-down effect. I've said in here numerous times, because I like to wear out things, but about trickle-down economics and Ronald Reagan, right? Well, if one linebacker's out and that means another linebacker is going to play 30 or 40 snaps in the game on defense, well, then how does that affect special teams? Maybe that guy was playing on 3 units last week, and now he can only play on 1 or 2 units. So I'm very much aware of that, very much in tune to that, and there's obviously a trickle-down effect to those things. You might be playing a team that runs more spread sets, and so now you're going to be using more defensive backs, and okay, somebody's playing a lot in this game that didn't play last week, or maybe the other way around. So those things are always going to impact my thinking in terms of who we're going to use. It might even impact some of the things we've got to do schematically on special teams because of who's available. You don't ever want to ask somebody to do something they can't physically do in a one-on-one matchup. So those things are always right up through the end of the week a factor for sure.
Next question is going to come from Jordan Kay, who's the new beat writer for the state newspaper.
Okay, outstanding.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Where's home?
Phoenix.
Okay, good stuff.
Yes.
Covered Boise State most recently.
Okay,
Yeah.
outstanding.
Very far. You mentioned it a bunch of like this team's going through adversity right now, and I'm sure you've been on a lot of teams that have gone through adversity in the midseason. What are the traits that the teams who get through it well, what traits do they have?
Yeah, they don't blink, they don't flinch. I've been blessed. I was thinking about this on my drive in early this morning. How many different programs that I've been a part of where a team won 9, 10, 11, 12 games, right? But I think back to certain teams at certain places. I'll give you one example. My last year at Elon University, 2010, was a 6-5 team. That probably doesn't make anybody think, oh, wow, a 6-5 team. In fact, the year before, we had a record number 9 wins, went to the playoffs for the first time. Everything was great. But that 6-5 team started off 2-4 with a really tough schedule, and a bunch of injuries and different things, but they never blinked, they never flinched, and they stuck together. It had really good leadership. And, we beat a nationally ranked Chattanooga team down the stretch. We beat a really good Furman team down the stretch. We scored 60-something points in our last game against Western Carolina. Like every guy on the bench got in the game on the last game of the season. And I'll always remember that team fondly just because, the truth is that was probably their potential that year based on all of these other factors, some of which they couldn't control. They couldn't control that App State had another national championship type team that year. They couldn't control, some of the other things that how Richmond had a really good team that year. We got beaten overtime by them. You know what I mean? So, but they just stayed the course, and that was a credit to them, the leadership. That was a credit to those assistant coaches that did such a fabulous job that, many of those guys are now coaching in different Power 5 schools and so forth. So that's what stands out to me. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.